Hey there, the internet! So, you want to be a professional jazz hobbyist? I graduated in '97 with a jazz trumpet degree into a drastically changing music career. I was already jaded. So, what is a professional jazz hobbyist, you ask? We do as a profession what others do as a hobby. Hobbyists have day jobs and don't need to make money as musicians. Some of my favorite musicians have day jobs. And there are full-time musicians who work all the time who should have day jobs and quit playing music for God's sake. I am by no means passing judgment on you if you have a day job. Heck, I teach music as my day job, and I want to pass along my method to you would-be jazz players, pro and hobbyist alike. Since this is episode 1, let me explain what's going on here. I've written jazz standards in scale degrees. I use up and down arrows to determine the range of notes outside of scale degrees 1 through 7. I explain the harmony in Roman numerals. Uppercase Roman numerals are major keys and lowercase are minor. Numbered versions of these tunes are to assist in transposing the tunes, which is a great form of practice and will help you memorize these standards. We're starting in B-flat with There Will Never Be Another You and B-flat minor with The Shadow of Your Smile. Then we'll move on to E-flat with There Is No Greater Love and E-flat minor with Softly as in a Morning Sunrise. Warm up in each key with an arpeggio and a scale. Do both in major, minor, augmented, whole tone, and diminished. I add a chromatic version of the scale. The arpeggio is a standard brass exercise and the scale is Clark's Study No. 2. You don't have to be a trumpet player to benefit from these exercises. Check out what you can do on piano. I've provided the numbered versions of these scales as well. Now that that's over with, let's begin by playing the songs. Time for me to talk at you? The higher up the income ladder you exist at, the more inroads you can make in your music hobby. At that point, I think the aspect of well-paid professionals playing gigs becomes an ethical issue. Case in point, the music careers of so many well-paid actors. Stay in your own lane. If these stars play shows, they should be forced to play with 70-piece orchestras just to employ actual musicians. As a late Gen Xer, I observed the following changes. The death of print media, the end of independent journalism, including music and arts criticism, the end of music retailers like Tower Records and The Warehouse, drastic changes in communications, from landlines and answering machines and pagers to cell phones and the internet, the end of sheet music retailers, the closure of many brick-and-mortar music stores, especially ones that sell orchestral instruments, closure of many venues. LA lost some great jazz jam sessions like Fifth Street Dick's and Chadney's. The corporate takeover of K-Jazz, formerly KLON. All of the new media platforms like cable, streaming, and video games not having union contracts. The onset of AI. Didn't anyone watch Terminator? Sci-fi comes true, folks. Basically, these trends have continued to devalue our art form, which has literally been a race to the bottom. So why keep practicing now? Back in the late 90s, I thought about the future prospects for college students in jazz programs. With ever-increasing tuition, how are the prospects of these students after graduating with tons of student debt into the current musical landscape? And what are they even teaching in these jazz programs now? That jazz begins with Herbie Hancock? One-chord jams and modal playing with your looper pedal is the new language? Everyone gets a jazz trophy if they can wiggle their fingers in an extended D minor jam? It is my hope that the meat and potatoes method I'm laying out in these videos will provide some food for thought for students enrolled in a music school that seems to have lost its way. Maybe you should ask your teacher if they can play these tunes in all 12 keys. A degree does not a music career make. Just subscribe to me, a bitter jazz has-been. If you notice, I'm playing an accordion. I was given an accordion back in high school because my garage band was playing acoustic shows in coffee shops. Back in the 90s, we had garage bands, not School of Rock. We were left to our own devices to try and learn songs and didn't need teachers to spoon-feed us riffs while our helicopter parents waited in the lobby and picked out cute outfits for our recitals. I figured out how to play the accordion, and it opened up a ton of doors. It also drastically changed how I think about jazz. I look at jazz as America's urban folk music. Jazz is at its folkiest when played acoustically, and some forms of jazz, like second line, Dixie, trad jazz, are already considered folk music. As an Angelino from a decidedly assimilated American suburban family, my second and third generation parents were not brought up with strong ties to their ethnic or nationalistic identities. They were raised on popular American culture, which was a rich landscape during their youth. I had little notion of the folk musics of my ancestors, save for the occasional bar or bat mitzvah with its usual hora. I developed an interest in klezmer music and found my way into UCLA's Klezmer Club, where the accordion was welcomed. I had also been scouring sheet music stores for accordion repertoire should an accordion gig come my way. I also played in UCLA's mariachi ensemble. My interest in folk music was just beginning. The accordion kept me learning new styles that I wouldn't have learned as a jazz trumpet major. Cumbia, norteño, boleros, Balkan. LA's thriving East LA scene was a cultural melting pot, and I played in several bands that were mixing and electrifying Latin styles. It dawned on me that suburban Americans like me had lost a connection with folk music, and that there was no unifying repertoire like mariachi for Mexicans that Americans could all sing along to. Yes, the U.S. has its regional folk musics like bluegrass in Appalachia, Zydeco in Louisiana, East Texas, polka in the Midwest, but we Americans as a whole don't have a shared folk music. Perhaps these regions didn't want outsiders appropriating their culture, and that also bummed me out. What music can suburban Americans from sprawling car-centric cities like LA claim as their own? Perhaps our current divisions as a country can be traced to no shared folk music tradition. Busking really solidified my belief in jazz as folk music. I started busking as soon as I got my first accordion, back in 1991. I figured out how to play trumpet with one hand and comp with the other. It was a pretty good act. I used busking to practice repertoire. The process of transposing tunes through all 12 keys, major and minor, is what I do while busking these days. I busk for a variety of reasons. It's great practice and a good form of marketing. I get gigs as a busker. I create arrangements, string together medleys, and have fun trying to connect with the audience while still scratching my itch to practice. I busk for therapy, spare change, and I busk to create awareness of our First Amendment freedoms. I enjoy showing up randomly in different locations, just setting up and playing. If you're playing music on the street, you're usually playing folk music. Many people have asked me advice on where to go to busk in LA. I usually provide somewhat vague answers to these questions. There is an unspoken busking code. Figure it out for yourself. Here's what I look for in a busking spot. Shade, passerby traffic or captive congregations of people. Closed or for lease businesses are usually fair game within an old town business district. If you can hear another busker or another source of music, move. Cacophony is not enjoyable. If busking in one part of town on consecutive days, change locations. This will prevent business owners from potentially lodging a complaint. Make a sign. QR codes for the various payment platforms is a good idea. Plan for the weather, sunscreen and hat, a heavy object to keep your case from blowing away, an umbrella in case it rains. I busk under the following cardinal rule. If you don't know a rule exists, you're not breaking it. I have had run-ins with police, city councils, business owners, and fellow buskers. It's all part of the adventure. I've become pretty well versed in regulations and am even involved in a First Amendment busking case. As this video is catered for jazz students, by all means, busk. There's so much you can learn from doing so. I love when I see high school and college-age kids busking. And the way things are going, busking might be your best shot at making money as the viability of music as a career continues to dwindle. Positivity, gratitude, blah, blah, blah. Because of innovations in batteries, busking went from a mainly acoustic affair to mostly amplified. It's rare to see a totally acoustic busker these days. This has changed the type of ensembles one might see busking. You see a lot of vocalists, and they usually aren't singing jazz. Although I consider busking to be a form of folk music, singing pop covers on the street still sounds like pop covers to me. All the more reason to play jazz as a busker. Create and breathe life into our shared urban folk music so perhaps Americans can come together around our wonderful shared culture. Well, it looks like the tunes are wrapping up. Hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for the keys of A-flat and D-flat.